I am Quentin Collins, Assistant Director of LaSalle University's Solstice MFA in Creative Writing program. Welcome to our April 2022 virtual alum reading featuring 3 of our graduates who have recently published books. As we open this virtual space, I would like to note that we acknowledge that the territory on which LaSalle University stands is that of the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts people. LaSalle's campus is a place to honor and respect the history and continued efforts of the Native and Indigenous community leaders which make up Eastern Massachusetts and the surrounding region. This statement is one small step in acknowledging the history that brought us to reside on the land and to help us seek understanding of our place within that history. Ownership of land is itself a colonial concept. Many tribes had seasonal relationships with the land we currently inhabit. Today, Chestnut Hill and also Newton is home to Indigenous peoples, including the Nipmuc Nations and the Massachusetts people. For more information, please visit the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness and the Commission on Indian Affairs of the state of Massachusetts. Tonight's reading features our graduates Jennifer DeBellis, Billy Still, and Andy Smart. I will introduce each reader, and then they will read for 15 minutes each. Throughout their readings, we will post links to where you can purchase their books in the chat. We will begin with Jennifer DeBellis. Jennifer DeBellis, MFA, is author of Warrior Sister, Cut Yourself Free from Library Tales Publishing and Blood Sisters from Main Street Rag. She edits Pink Panther magazine and directs a Rift Warrior project and DW Guild. A former Meadowbrook Writing Project Fellow, Jennifer facilitates summer workshops for Oakland University and teaches for Saginaw Valley State University. I now pass the virtual floor to Jennifer.
Hi, thank you, Quentin, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to you and Meg for putting this together for us. I look forward to hearing the other readers tonight. And thank you to Solstice MFA and their new home, LaSalle. Congratulations on that. Okay, so I'm going to read just 2 poems to open up, and then I'm going to read an excerpt from my book. And I have maybe a trigger warning as I do talk about sensitive topics, but it's like a PG-13. So there is physical violence that is covered in these. So this first one is an ekphrastic piece after Fuseli's The Nightmare. Flickering light is still light. Night is a demon pack of mongrel mutts, incubi that devour you, that rip the veil that shields your life from the night terrors. Rip it to bits like tomb raiders, mining your once well-hidden secrets. Even in sleep, you're on display as the sexy dead girl trope in budding beauty you've been since you were 12. It's hard to breathe with an incubus on your chest, or a jackass heckling you from shadows that have followed you into every bedroom since you were a teen. Even your own bed's no longer your safe place, hasn't been since 14. In your darkest deep, where you keep your surviving torch set to flicker, darkness carves its name into the main box beam. Between your and your little sister's initials, you traced into the space above your pillows. That night, you pinky promised nothing could destroy you if you never let the nightmare leave this room. So this next piece is from my first book, my coming-of-age poetry collection, Blood Sisters, and a lot of the pieces in here are what inspired my second book. So this is one of the title pieces, Blood Sisters 7. You can't get blood out of a stone, traditional proverb. M went by a lot of names, and M isn't one of them, though M is what we'll call her here. M and I met in history class. She needed a new sidekick, and so did I. M's past sounded like discordant tones that droned from a poorly tuned instrument. She and I were a perfect match, our inner harmonies as unresolved as our quest to show we were invincible, stone solid. The first thing M did was give me a makeover. Since blondes turned more heads, she started with foil and highlights, then changed her mind to full platinum. Next was wardrobe, a little more designer and skin later, and I was ready to join her secret society. Our first mission included a hot tub and frat boys and met while cruising the Birmingham shopping district. Turns out the hot tub was actually a jacuzzi bathtub in the guy's bedroom suite, but I digress. Picture this: 4 guys, 2 girls clad in spring bikinis, and 1 camera. The biggest challenge was which guy sat out to snap pictures and refill drinks. In a bubbly cluster of limbs over limbs, I was glad I shaved. I was also glad when the right guy's hands found my waist and pulled me to sit between his legs. The most memorable thing about that night was not the makeout session later, though that was unforgettable as well. Most striking was what happened when M brought the photos to history class. The boys passed them around and looked back at me as if seeing me for the first time. Leaving class, the teacher said, "You girls look good." He licked his lips, real good. In that moment, I realized both boys and men wanted us, whether we wanted them to or not. I also realized how my response would make or break the rest of the school year. Thanks, I flashed a quick smile over my shoulder. When my grades improved, I wasn't sure if it was due to my renewed interest in the class or my teacher's renewed interest in my bikini shots. But I didn't care as long as I got what I wanted. All right, so this last part is a few small little sections from my newest book, Warrior Sister, Cut Yourself Free from Your Assault. And this section that I'm sharing informs the title. Dead Man Walking. Several years ago, I heard a great message about carrying around dead weight. Dead weight is one of those concepts that has become so mainstream, it's lost its graphic luster. For those of you who get squeamish, some of what follows might make you uncomfortable. I hope you will trust and follow me through this section regardless. Dead weight is an idiom with a long history dating back to ancient times. During the Roman Empire, particularly at its height around AD 100, ancient Roman emperors were known to invent heinous, often bizarre penalties as punishment for crimes. Punishment with weighted items that had a symbolic connection to the crime were a recurrent theme in many of these sentences. This theatrical tactic grew from a long history of punishment playing out as entertainment while promoting social order. Originally, many of these punishments played out in the gladiator arena. When this form of using fear to promote social order became less effective, the accused were forced to walk out their sentences in the streets. This new style of punishment extended the arena and its gladiators into the public sphere, where fear could be heightened. Weight as a symbol for balancing justice traces back centuries to Egyptian mythology and has been adapted by other cultures since. Tracing back to ancient Egypt, the first goddess of justice is thought to be Ma'at, whose purpose was to balance universal order through truth and law, offset by morality and justice. Fast forward to the Greek goddess of justice, Themis, and her daughter Dike, to when the Romans took control of Egypt, and we get Justitia, the Roman goddess of justice many still refer to today. It is not lost on me, and hopefully on you either, that the Romans adopted these weighted punishments from the concept of a blindfolded deity who literally balances the scales. Some of these punishments included forcing a slave to carry a plank of wood on their shoulders or tying a weight to slaves' feet as they were beaten so they, the living merchandise, couldn't flee. Other crimes, like treason, carried a sentence of being buried alive under the weight of cold earth, harsh earth, or drowning after being bound with rocks. But the most gruesome death by weight was reserved for murderers. The Romans were known to punish murderers with a life sentence, where the dead victim's corpse was trapped to the assassin's bare backside. The murderer was bound to the victim, joined at the wrists, torsos, calves, and ankles for maximum skin-to-skin exposure, sentenced to live while connected to a decaying corpse. Everywhere the murderer went, the victim followed. Being followed by your victim and haunted by your murderous act will be the least of your concerns. Regardless of how strong, mentally and physically, you feel, the reality of carrying this dead weight soon becomes apparent. Rigor mortis will set in and make movement hard. A few days in, the stench of decay is undeniable and drives others away from you. Soon, flies and other pests assist with decomposition. Infectious disease from the decaying corpse slowly enters your body through your skin. Your inevitable death is slow and painful. Death by association is your fate. You were a dead man walking the moment they strapped your victim's dead weight to your back. Here's what I want you to see, modern reader. All too often, we assume our attacker's punishment. We strap the dead weight of our experience onto our backs and attempt to live a normal, healthy life, carrying that rotting corpse as it literally and figuratively sucks the life from us. You see, when you carry that dead weight, you become a twofold victim. The real solution to your recovery from assault is to cut yourself free from your incident and assailant. The ultimate form of justice occurs when you separate yourself from these things that bind you into cycles of torment. The moment you release that dead weight, that punishment that you were never meant to endure, your recovery and you will thrive. So I guess I'll just stop there. And if you want to know more, you have to buy the book. So thank you again for letting me read from both of my books.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that wonderful reading. And yes, please buy books. Buy books from these wonderful authors. We thrive. We thrive on the community support, and Solstice is nothing if not a community. Next up, we have Billy Still. Billy Still is author of The Jawbone of a Carnivore, Praying the Pathway to Peace, a book for people with spiritual questions and an interest in adventure. Billy has spent a life as a pastor, husband, father, adventurer, wilderness traveler, ultra athlete, and one who struggles to identify prayer in the ways we move through life. He is recently retired, and in his retirement earned an MFA in creative nonfiction from Solstice. Billy and his wife, Ann, have spent their life together in Mississippi, Alaska, and Arizona, as well as Colorado, where they currently live. I now pass the virtual floor over to Billy. Billy, you are muted.
How's that?
That's perfect.
Okay, it just popped up. Sorry about that. So I'm grateful to read with these other writers and for Soltis for giving us a chance. Everybody who writes wants it to matter, not just ourselves, but to others. And so one of the things I want to do, I'm going to do 2 really short readings and then a longer one. The shorter ones, they help you make a connection between movement and adventure and prayer. And so you can see how they're influence each other. So I'll say this: my breath forms a solid cloud in front of my face. A subarctic February night, 2 a.m., I stumble down an embankment and onto the frozen surface of Alaska's Yetna River, miles from a road. Our varying paces have separated me from my friends, and I am alone, yet not really alone. At this moment, I feel fully alive. I take a step forward, and the frost crushing under my feet sounds like thin glass shattering on brick. This is the Adidasport 100-mile endurance run. I am propelled forward into the frozen dark night, confident, content, and permeated with a sense of wonder. To be here, this cold, this alive, this is a prayer. The second reading is about an event that happened in my life that caused me to think about life differently. And so I lost my paper clip. Here we go. As I cradled my head in my hands, I felt that like a knife had broken my sternum, piercing my chest. I didn't notice the gray, icy water seeping through my shorts until I stood up to walk and found my buttocks was soaked. What was happening? All through April, I had experienced intermittent chest pain while running. I would run through my Anchorage, Alaska neighborhood. After 7 minutes, it would start. I would slow to a walk. It would go away. It would not return during the run. What did this mean? Mount St. Augustine had been erupting and the snow housed layers of volcanic ash. As snow melted, the ash blew free, and I explained the frequent chest discomfort as a bad cold aggravated by volcanic ash, a uniquely Alaskan form of denial. As I stood up to walk home, the icy gray water that had soaked through my shorts dripped down my legs. I began to shiver. April in the south central Alaska is not terribly cold, but the world is wet. It's still hard to stay warm. 6 months of snow melts in a week. Drains are frozen. Water has nowhere to drain. It pools over the earth, waiting to be soaked into your shoes, socks, or your running shorts. I found myself in denial about the chest pain, but not about the threat of wet clothing and freezing skin. In my mind, this was adding up to a rough morning. I went home, showered, and drove to my office. I did not mention the incident to Ann. Ann is my wife. Not yet. I am not a man of few words. Part of my job is to be articulate about faith and life's most significant issues, but today, got nothing to say. As I arrived in my office, I was developing a strong urge to confirm one thing, that nothing seriously happened. I shut the door and got out the phone book. It's 1990, pre-internet, and I had not seen a doctor in a long time. My thinking was not very clear as I lifted the big, bulky Yellow Pages book and opened it on my desk. Even though my thought process was a bit jumbled, I knew I wanted to find a non-surgeon physician with a cardiac specialty. I opened the Yellow Pages to physicians, scanned the pages, and found 2 doctors in the Anchorage phone book that met my criteria. I knew one of them. I called the other one and told his receptionist my story. It would be best if you went to the emergency room, she said. No, I feel fine now. I really don't want to do that. Well, we don't have any openings today. I need your help. And if you don't have any openings, perhaps I will just come and sit in your lobby till somebody helps me. Oh my, she sighed. Thank you so much for not doing that. I'll check with the doctor and call you back within an hour. I hung up the phone and told the church office manager I would be back in a few minutes. I got in my car, drove to Wendy's, ordered a double bacon cheeseburger, a large order of fries, and a Frosty. While stuck between believing nothing was wrong and an uncertain future, I had a premonition that my life was going to change. I savored every bite. Would I ever eat like this again? Fatty, salty, greasy, so large I had to squeeze it and push it flat to get it into my mouth. This was to be the last hamburger of my life. And the last reading that I'll offer is a little bit longer than the other 2, but it talks about Kenai Peninsula Borough in Alaska. We moved to a really remote place on the Kenai Peninsula, and they provided a land disposal program, kind of like modern homesteading, except you didn't have to live there. And so this is a story of trying to do that. Wrong page, sorry. Okay, so we've found, you had to find your lot. We found our lot. We were going to build a cabin. And later that summer, after the remaining snow melted and the mud dried up a bit, I loaded my pack, strapped my chainsaw to the pack frame, and headed out to make more progress clearing the cabin site. As I approached the tree where I had left a gas can earlier in the season, I noticed that the plastic tarp was gone, yet the gas can remained just as I had left it, snuggled tightly between 2 exposed roots. I slipped my pack off my back and propped it against another tree. Walked over to the gas can and prepared to break it loose from the wet, frozen ground and lift it from the tree. I was startled when a modest tug caused it to fly off the ground, weightless and empty. As I held it up and looked at the bottom, I saw 10 puncture marks. A bear had lifted it up, punctured the bottom with its claws, and put it right back where it found it. I thought, oh, today will be a 20-mile hike and I'll get no work done. My heart began to smile. I was not angry. I was not even frustrated. I was just looking for an excuse not to go home yet. Sitting on a log, I ate a sandwich, relishing the silence and unexpected idleness. I did not want this peace, interrupted only by the sound of water dripping down Otter Creek to end. As usual, I was in for a big surprise. When Cotton, my big dog, and I began to walk home, we topped a hill where we could see the trail continuing ahead of us, winding through head-high grass and berry bushes. I looked down at my dog and saw the hair raised on his back, his ears alert, his tail stiff and still. Once again, he was fulfilling his role as my faithful guide. Cotton lived in a realm I wanted to know. He saw and smelled and heard things that I didn't. At this moment, he was aware of a threat I only recognized through him. I reached down, clipped the nylon lead to his collar so he wouldn't run off to find it. Scanning the trail in the distance, I noticed a conspicuous-looking black spot a few hundred miles away. Deep mud, I thought, until it stood up and began to walk in my direction. Bears have a great sense of smell and very poor vision. The wind was blowing hard our way, so this bear wasn't likely to smell us. I was not going to walk off the trail into the tall grass where I couldn't see, so there was nowhere to go. Common wisdom says it's good to be seen and heard and good to look big. So I began to wave my arms and I began to sing. Having just spent a week at junior high church camp, the chorus that came to mind was, "The Spirit in me greets the Spirit in you, hallelujah." And while singing, would let the bear know where I was, the off-key, fearful tremor in my voice would surely scare her off. I find myself recognizing something new about silence. It has a deeper meaning than sound waves bouncing off my eardrums. At this moment, my imagination is screaming, "You could be killed by a bear." I can hear my heart beating in my chest. The bear, who occasionally woofs for her cubs, seems to be bellowing her displeasure. While none of this is very loud, it creates a disturbance that screams with noisy confusion. As the bear stepped off the trail into the tall grass, I see that she's followed by 3 small cubs. The triplets stay on the trail and keep trundling toward Cotton and me. Within 10 yards of us, the cubs finally turn and head out into the grass to find their mother. She drops all fours and I can no longer see her. I decide I'll wait 10 minutes and then start walking forward again. I look at my watch. After 7 minutes, the sound of blood pounding in my temples tells me I can't stand here any longer. There's just too much tension. And since I can't stand still, I might as well walk. The world is as silent as I've ever heard it. What happened to the bears? No sight of them, no sound of them. And as my anxiety is resolved, the silence begins to return to my heart. When it became clear that the bears were gone, I unleashed my dog. Immediately, he charged full speed up the next hill, his hair raised in excitement. Reaching the top of the hill, he threw his front legs to the ground and began uttering a low, guttural growl. Calling him was a waste of time. He is so fueled by the noisy surge of adrenaline that he's deaf. Unable to see the crest of the hill, I don't know what has elicited such a show of defensive behavior. I assume it's another bear. I sigh, stay calm, wait, silence the noise of anxiety. And again, when I run out of patience, I walk up and take a look. Cotton is nose to nose with a huge bull moose. The bull is on its front knees, and they are so close, their breath intermingles in the damp air. Each of their heads is frozen, wearing unflinching stares, warrior statues in a wilderness park. This creature carries as much potential danger as the bear. Its rack must be 60 inches across. Bears generally look for a way to avoid a confrontation. Moose act as if the trail is their personal possession. Often they refuse to surrender their space, but in this case, my sudden presence startles the moose, who jumps and runs full speed down the trail toward me. I leap off the trail and stumble to the ground. Fortunately, the moose keeps going. Whether out of momentum or will, I cannot say, but I am grateful for his single-minded claim to this trail. Cotton comes running back to me, licking my face that is still pressed against the soft, cool, muddy ground, and seemingly quite proud of himself for having managed the situation on his own terms. The next week, Ann and I head together back to the cabin site, this time with a full gas can, a tent, a chainsaw, and a plan to work and explore for several days. On our way out, I tell the bear story for the umpteenth time. I look down the trail and say, "The bear was right over there where that bear is." She angrily scolds me for teasing her, just as the bear stands, stretches his nose in the air, smells us, and disappears. While we often think of remote places of silence, we can fail to notice that they are also places of great activity. The movement of plants and animals speak in their own language. Perhaps my task was to learn to be quiet and to hear them. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Billy, for that wonderful reading. I remember when I was still a student in the program, I was just like, this is a person who has a lot of adventures, and I will live vicariously through those stories because I will never stare down a bear. So thank you so much, Billy, for that.
Thanks, Quentin. Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
And now we come to Andy Smart. Andy Smart's first book, The More You Hate Me, a memoir and essays, is forthcoming from Unsolicited Press in August 2022. His chapbook of hybrid poetry, Blue Horse Suite, is available from Cattywampus Press, and Andy has had many other publications in journals, including Salamander Magazine. And I now pass the virtual floor to Andy Smart.
Good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see y'all. There I am. It's so nice to see everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Meg and Quentin. Thanks to Unsolicited Press for showing up. I appreciate you. The first two pieces I'm going to read are from my forthcoming memoir that Quentin mentioned, and then I will close with a small section from my chapbook. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. The Marines in Stanley Kubrick's film Full Metal Jacket pray to the violent gods of duty in this way. As the camera glosses over each face, it lands on Leonard Gomer Pyle Lawrence, the overweight fuck-up who is abused by his drill sergeant unto the point of madness. The prayer goes on. My rifle is my best friend. It is my life. At the end of Act 1, Gomer Pyle blows his brains against the wall of a latrine. My name is Andy, and on June 15th of 2007, my dad, Jeff, shot himself in the head in my backyard. Like Gomer Pyle, he was fat in the service and the victim in the story of his life. Dad watched Full Metal Jacket like some men watch the news or read the Bible, to find truth, guidance. He watched that film like some men look into a mirror, to see themselves as others do. But in the end, my father watched Kubrick's movie over and over again to work up the crazy brave to take ownership of himself. Before Pyle pulls the trigger, he leers into the camera and says, "I am in a world of shit." It is a phrase my old man echoed often throughout his life. This book is not a love song for the dead or a tribute to the cinematic genius of Stanley Kubrick, nor is it a roadmap, an atlas of the desolate country of suicide. This is my father. There are many like him, but this one is mine. The second section deals with the complex notion of empathy that my dad felt for some of the characters in Full Metal Jacket, most notably Gomer Pyle. It begins with an epigraph. I spend a lot of time thinking about how empathy may just be narcissism projected onto others. From Raymond Carver's OkCupid profile, edited by Gordon Lish. R. Lee Ermey's first line of dialogue in Full Metal Jacket is an introduction that he is the one in charge, the drill sergeant, the closest thing to an almighty being on Paris Island. That's what got Dad. First line, first viewing, forever had him hooked. Dad was a retention counselor, yes, but before he'd gotten as old and as fat as he would end up, he too was a drill instructor. The obvious disparity between a USMC recruit gunny and a staff sergeant in the National Guard evaporated as the film unfolded. My father saw himself, felt himself, heard himself in Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. When I was much younger and first saw the movie, Pop would make me sit next to him on the sofa, ramrod straight. "This is how it is," he would half whisper. "This is the fucking A real deal." My "how would you know" reflex was still undeveloped, so I believed him. R. Lee Ermey was, in fact, a Marine in Vietnam. He served with Wing Support Group 17 and was in country 14 months. He was the first retiree in the history of the Corps to receive a promotion after the fact. But my father wasn't any of those. The empathy and kindred feeling he had for Ermey's fictional drill instructor trope was overinflated. While Gunny Lee was shaping combat Marines, Dad was yelling at weekend warriors, scaring kids for the sake of scaring them. Learning to tie my shoes was a shit show. I was a left-handed child of right-handed parents. My mother had the patience to teach me, but not the know-how. My father had neither, but he was my senior drill instructor, not my dad. "You will square your ass away and affix those fucking shoes to your feet with double knots, and you will do it fucking now." Affix? Is that a fancy word for tie? I'm 4 years old here. I know what it means by the context clues, though I can't call them that yet. I also know my father is changing registers. Usually, he would say, "Put your fucking shoes on, boy." You don't know I know this, Dad, and I will never tell you, because even once I'm grown, I will remain a little bit afraid. But then you'll die, and I'll be braver than brave, crazy and out loud. You will not see, but I will do. Who says we should have no secrets from each other? In Full Metal Jacket, the recruits are terrified into all sorts of things they didn't think they could accomplish. They climb ropes, they run half marathons through the Carolina underbrush and across mud lakes. As Private Joker narrates, they are ready to chow down on human flesh and be happy for it. My father is my gunny. There is no time for me to be a maggot who doesn't pack the gear to serve in the shoe-tying world. I will motivate you, he swears. Motivate. Create in someone the desire to perform a certain task does not connote providing assistance or instruction. I am motivated, Pop. I just don't know what the fuck to do. This is pure Hartman. My father slipped into character as often as he needed to or had occasion for. As I fumbled around with metaphors like make bunny ears and have the rabbit go under the fence, then lasso the bunny with your rope, Pop thrived. I was helpless and he was superior, not only in size and achievement, but in authority. You will learn this shit. I will teach you. Again, Hartman. The old man's capacity for fear-mongering was sharper than his originality. He would slap my hands, ridicule me for not knowing how to reverse my instincts and mimic his own muscle memory. In the film, Hartman slaps Pyle across the left cheek. Was that left or right, Hartman demands. He slaps the right cheek. Again, was that left or right? Don't get it wrong. You checked out of the verbiage just enough to avoid admitting you were a plagiarist, didn't you, old man? He would mock me, wait for me to cry. When I did cry, I was a bitch, a weakling, my mother's son. When I eventually learned to tie the accursed shoes, there was no celebration. There was always a new skill I had not learned or a new attitude I was not supposed to have. There was war all the time. And my father, as Hartman promised he would be, was a conveyor of death. How much of my home movie do I show you? The episodes are innumerable. Me standing at attention in the center of the living room. This is to ensure that my senior drill instructor has unimpeded access to both of my flanks as well as my front and rear. A totalitarian can only succeed if it can surround what it wishes to conquer. My father screaming, one of his favorite techniques was the impossible question. Do you understand me? Yes, shut up. Or, do you understand me? Ellipses. Answer me, motherfucker. Yeah, shut the fuck up. In some eardrum of one of the cortexes, my brain has a recording of Dad as Hartman. Its pitch, its tenor, that voice, its bombastic baritone. Gunny Dad is motherfucking the ghosts of every mistake he ever thought I made, but it only registers as a subaudible trigger that shoots off rounds of tinnitus. This is to say, I am numb, not deaf. Empathy is more a matter of posturing, especially in the case of empathy with fictional characters. If imitation is the highest form of flattery, then empathy of this sort is the most histrionic mimicry. The E word doesn't change us. We change behaviors, personas, our looks, our concepts of ourselves. We bend until, if you are my father, you break. And the last piece I will read is from my chapbook, Blue Horse Suite, available now from Cattywampus Press. This introduces a new metaphor, obviously, of blue horses, but it does address Full Metal Jacket. This is an equine education. Full Metal Jacket makes use of the rifleman's creed, which goes in part, my rifle is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I must master my life. Marine recruits lie in bed with their M14s and recite the creed nightly like a prayer. When I finally graduated college at age 31 with a bachelor's in creative writing, the big question was, now what? The blue horses nosed around, poking their long muzzles toward me, hinting. Who knows, I said. Maybe a master's? Must I master the craft of the written word the way I must, or believe I must, master the art of adulting? In Full Metal Jacket, Private Joker, played by Matthew Modine, narrates toward the end of the film's first act. Graduation is only a few days away. The drill instructors are proud that we are growing beyond their control. He speaks of graduation from Marine Corps recruit training, boot camp. When the Marines in Kubrick's film graduate, they receive their field assignments. As the drill instructor predicts early in the film, most of them are assigned to 0300 infantry. Most of you, the DI prophesies, will go to Vietnam. Some of you will not come back. Gomer Pyle is among those called upon to be a foot soldier. But Joker, the voice behind the terror and dark hilarity of the film, is different. Private Joker, the drill sergeant calls out, "Sir, yes, sir. 4212, basic military journalism. You've got to be shitting me. You think you're some kind of fucking writer?" In Joker's hands are the reins of blue horses, inasmuch as they can ever be roped. Joker is yoked with the burden of witness, the obligation of telling. He looks at his boots, their inspection grade shimmer of polish, and he begins to know. After undergrad, I was rejected by the MFA programs at the University of Iowa and Washington University in St. Louis. I began to feel the sting of the drill instructor's hand slapping me hard across the face and berating me, menacing me with the question, "What is your major malfunction?" I saw myself in Gomer Pyle's boots, heard my own voice cracking as I admitted, "Sir, I don't know, sir." I took what I think was a year off from school, from writing, from reading. I worked at the hotel where I worked before and have continued to work since. Blue horses were nowhere. There was not one horse in the country of my consciousness, but of course, that isn't true. Blue horses defy all reason. After Gomer Pyle's suicide, Full Metal Jacket makes a jump cut to Joker and his colleague Rafterman having a beer at a cafe table in Vietnam. Viewers don't see them pack their gear and depart the Carolina Recruit Depot. We never see the C-130 transport plane or the column of trucks shuttling newbies from the tarmac to their platoons. They are simply there, in country, to use the film's own verbiage, in a world of shit. It's not a world of shit by any stretch, the self-described bucolic acreage of the Solstice Low Residency MFA and Creative Writing Program, formerly of Pine Manor College. But it's a state of suspended reality. For 2 weeks, twice a year, matriculated students are in residence. The outside world of work, family, and the numerous et ceteras crowding our lives are turned off. Blue Horse knows when I am here. When I become my own enemy and demean myself, you've got to be shitting me. You're no writer. The Blue Horse kicks my dormitory door, wakes me out of my sleep. It comes alone or in a pair or in a parade like Marines in dress uniform at graduation. Blue Horse doesn't speak in words, but in action. Sir, yes, sir. Gomer Pyle graduates, becomes a Marine. This is one scene before his suicide and his murder of his drill sergeant. His death was a foregone conclusion because it was part of a script. Kubrick needed that suicide, so he had it. My father's suicide is not a hereditary predestination. I can graduate without fear. I will. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Andy. And I do not only heap praise on you for the shout out for the Solstice program. That was a wonderful reading. Thank you. Let's give a big and audible thank you to Jennifer, Billy, and Andy. Feel free to turn your mics and applaud.
Great reading.
Well done. Well done.
Indeed. Bears and blue horses, go.
Well, thank you all for joining us tonight.
Yes.
Thank you to Meg for doing the work in the background with posting those links. And we appreciate you all being here for a night of literature. And we wish you a safe evening for the rest of the evening, wherever you are.